People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Today's my birthday.
Nice to be back. Nice to see you all. Listen, fellas, I got a very funny story I got to tell you.
Have you ever been to an army hospital? When you see it live, there's more effect than a protest.
13. I wanted 16.
I'm a very frank person, George. I'll lay it right on the line. Your script, although it is an excellent one, does not have the ingredients for a commercial success. You see, I must present the project to my investors, and that project must meet certain requirements.
You mean like riding Love Garden?
That's it. You've got to wait till she says something. And you just answer and you play it by ear, that's all.
You like it here?
Very interesting, yes. No, Black Snake! Please don't kill the sheriff. You know you're better than him. I need him for my bread and butter. If it wasn't for him, I'd still be out on the streets. Please, please have mercy on his soul.
Yeah. Hi. You must be number 13.
There's no 13.
Who are you?
I'm no one. I don't exist.
I don't understand.
Could you try?
Welcome to the projection booth. I'm your host, Mike White. Join me once again is Ms. Heather Drain.
Hello, hello.
Also back in the booth is Mr. Ben Buckingham.
G'day, all.
We are kicking off a month looking at lost or obscure films with William Sachs's 1974 film, There Is No 13. It is an experimental anti-war film that Sachs shot with a blend of absurdist humor, surreal fantasy sequences, and biting commentary on the Vietnam War. It centers on a draftee named George Thomas. As he reflects on his life, the film spirals into a series of bizarre, disjointed vignettes, almost like channel surfing through his mind. One of the reasons it's not widely known is because it was effectively suppressed in the U.S. Sachs has said that it was shown at the Berlin Film Festival and got a strong response, but it was never given a proper theatrical release in the States. There's some lore about military or government pressure due to its anti-war content, though that's possibly apocryphal. I can just hear our ratings drop whenever I do one of these Modi Mays, whenever I say, if you don't want anything ruined, turn off the podcast and come back after you've seen the film. That's not going to be very easy with a lot of these films, so...
Good luck, buddy. You're gonna need it.
Hopefully you're a Patreon person, and I'm sneaking these films to our Patreon. So, Heather, had you seen There Is No 13 before coming on the show to talk about it?
No, because as you just alluded to, this film is very hard to track down. I was familiar with it, and I was immediately intrigued when I saw it pop up. And you had mentioned doing a show on it because I'd read the Rialto Report. They did a little article on Gene Jennings' role in it. And I was like, wow, this film sounds really interesting. I wonder if somebody's considered themselves a bit of a deep cut person. I'm like, this is totally new to me. But it sounded like it was pretty much considered lost in that article. So when you brought it up, I was like, absolutely, I want to dive into this film. And I'm so glad I did. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it.
And Ben, how about yourself?
I realized recently that I had heard of it in relation to Mark Damon no longer being an actor, that I'd heard it discussed in that context, but no stimulated memories or connections or anything. And when I was looking through what the films you had there, and I did a quick Google, and was like, lost experimental response to Vietnam War plus Riz Ortolani. I'm in.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how I got a hold of this film. I'm pretty sure that it is William Sachs himself who is the source of this, according to a lot of these articles we've read. I wanted to tell you, Heather, I saw a picture of Alexander Tushinsky with William Sachs, and he was like, oh yeah, like he showed me There Is No 13. I'm like, of course, Alexander, you always are in those right places at the right time. I'm like, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I can't remember how I got my hands on this. This was on a list that I found years and years ago of these are all missing films, and I just was very determined to try and track down as many as I possibly could. And yeah, managed to somehow. And then, I've been wanting to watch it for years and years and finally used this as an excuse to do so. And I have to say, this movie is nothing like the movie that I had in my head. When I read about the movie, it talks about there's a guy, he's in Vietnam, and he has had sex with 12 women over his life, and he's reminiscing about those women, and there will never be a number 13. So I pictured this as almost like a guy at a VA hospital or a guy like literally in a trench in Vietnam talking to somebody else, and this being a series of vignettes walking through from number 1 to number 12. And then right at the end, he gets blown up or something, and then the title comes up, There Is No 13. That's what I was picturing. What I saw, totally different than that. Wow. In fact, I want to ask you guys, do we ever see like number 1 through 9, or we just see like 10, 11, 12 kind of thing?
No.
We only see 11 and 12, and I have written down a transcription of the conversation with the maybe 13, which does show that she might not be 13. There might not be a 13. Maybe he is the 13 that doesn't exist. I don't know. But yes, exact same series of thoughts that you had. I had that myself, and I have come to the conclusion that is all like marketing blurbs attempting to sell it at the time, because that's the kind of film that they were making at the time of that kind of like a little bit sexy, yada, yada, yada. And then because it's just vanished and no one has cared, Sachs isn't being internet savvy, getting on the internet and writing what's there or anything. We're just stuck with what appears to be like a marketing pitch. And it doesn't reflect the film at all, really.
No, especially because like if somebody... Like, anybody listening to this and you Google it, and one of the first things pops up, of course, is going to be the Wikipedia. And it's just one sentence, or a man reminisces about the first 12 women he had sex with. And that's really not what this is at all. You don't. The earlier girls, who knows? But that's not even the point. It's not even really the main thrust of it. Also, what blew my mind, like just as the film started, is seeing names in the credits, and I'm like, how in the hell is this so obscure? Because while Mark Damon's not like a huge name, like a Redford or anything like that, like this guy before he went into producing and being a distributor and all of that, had several film credits to his name that are very respectable. I believe he's in Bava's Black Sabbath.
He's opposite Vincent Price in House of Usher. He's the sexy romantic lead. He has been seen by many faces in the mid-20th century. He is a big deal at that time.
Harvey Lembeck. Oh, my God.
Oh, there you go. I knew you were going to bring up Harvey Lembeck.
You know me so well. You know how much I love Harvey Lembeck. Oh, my God, the smile on my face when I saw his name in the credits. I was like, hell yes. I think I literally wrote my notes, the man, ... Harvey Lembeck. So whenever I shuffle off this mortal coil, people are going to transcribe these like my chicken scratch and just be like, Harvey Lembeck? What?
Somewhere in the Mondo Heather library, just like, what is going on here? Why is she so obsessed with Harvey Lembeck? Why does it say Heather plus Eric Von Zipper forever?
Now, Mike, let's not get it twisted. Let's cut the deck. You know that Timothy Carey is the one I would be hearting, but I would totally hang out with Eric Von Zipper.
I'm through thinking. And what I'm thinking is, that poor little sugarcane is mixed up with undesirables. Well, Eric Von Zipper's going to protect her. I think I adore her. She's nifty.
That skydiving looks like fun. Like to try it, boss?
Eric Von Zipper thinks Sickles is better. Right?
Right.
we go!
I would be one of his rats or mice or whatever those girls were called. But Harvey, like, oh my God, Ben, you mentioning Riz Ortolani, one of my favorite film composers. Like, if Ortolani is one of those guys, or even if I've never seen the movie, if I find a soundtrack that he's done, I'm like, I have to hear this. I want those. And so it's like, I have covered and written about films that are literally underground films that are way easier to find and attract that information than this one. Like, this should not be anywhere near the obscure level it is. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and so much of what's written online is just slightly reworded variations on the same 3 paragraphs. And then even if you listen to William Sachs talk or interviews or whatever, and he's saying pretty much those same thing. And I only managed to scrape a couple of little bits of info here and there. And so much of what I figured out is just, this dot. The Sachs was in Rome working on anglicizing Italian films so they didn't look like they were Italian because the market was so flooded they didn't want them in America. So he was like changing the names and redubbing and putting in like the sounds of cameras operating so it sounded like the dubbing was real. That's where he met his wife and Mark Damon. Of course, Mark Damon was in with AIP and all that with the Bava's connections in Italy and America backwards and forwards. So then I was like, oh, okay, that one of the editors is primarily more a sound and dialogue edit in Italy. Which one was that? I think it was George, was it? No, Michael Billingsley, sorry, who, like, I looked up, was like, doesn't sound very Italian. No, he's born in Sioux Falls, Idaho, but he died in Rome, Italy. And he worked on like Fistful of Dynamite and Bertolucci's Last Tango in Paris, 1900s, Stealing Beauty, Cavani's Night Porter, DiMartino's Puma Man, Diodato's Rays of Atlantis and Cut and Run, Fulci's The New Gladiators. So I'm like, what? Who is all? He's an editor? And then I was like, okay, so the sound recording was done in Rome. That's in the credits of the film. So it's like you've got these weird, like 6 degrees kind of thing of how it all moves around and why then. So then that would, of course, would be why Riz is doing the score because they did all the audio in Italy. I was like, somebody could have figured that out and put it in the Wikipedia before me and saved me like an hour. I'm going into Letterboxd and changing the plot synopsis this week. I've held off until we discuss it so we can get some sort of a 4-dimensional idea of what is actually happening. But I'm definitely changing that fucking plot synopsis this week because it's just, it doesn't so, it's such an injustice.
Ross Kelly's also in it. I must forget. If you look at one of the posters, the Italian posters, her name is on the poster. She's in the movie for 5 minutes, but this was her era where she was in a few years before Greetings, like De Palma's Greetings, which I feel like would make it interesting. There's a few films I kept thinking like this would pair well with those, like that one. And weirdly enough, Robert Downey Sr.'s Pound. I feel like there's some sort of tonality. I don't know. They're two great films, but there's some kind of, I don't know, there's like a tone about them that I think would match really well.
Real scrappy, yeah, like this underground kind of thing. I mean, you feel like they were squeezing every single penny for this movie.
And there's also like a theatricality to both of them and the way that surrealism is implemented. It's very, very stagey. Of course, with this one, you have a lot of vaudeville themes, especially with our patron saint, R.V. Lebeck. But so it's like you have like old American culture kind of tropes being played, like the Old West sequence. There's a sequence we realize later on it's like a film, like he's actually shooting a film, but it's at like a soda counter, which again seems like a very Americana kind of thing. It seems like a very Americana situation. It's fascinating, the Italian influence, because this is if this film feels intensely American.
Well, and speaking of De Palma, Ralph Bode, who did the cinematography for this one, he would end up going on to Dressed to Kill and quite a lot of other things. I mean, he was working very hard until his death in 2001. But like, why is this one so hard to find when the DP at least is doing like Don Juan DeMarco and Bad Girls and Made in America, like super mainstream things. Uncle Buck, for God's sakes, But then he was also the DP on stuff like The Accused and Distant Thunder, like real well done Oscar Beatty kind of stuff. And yeah, like this was, I want to say, a second time. And I know that we're watching as a kind of a shitty copy transferred over from like a 3/4 U-matic tape, and there's some real dropout here and there, but I mean, it does look good what we do get to see.
I was actually surprised by how solid the quality of it was, ignoring tracking stuff and picking up someone's mobile phone signal a couple of points. I did feel like I was missing a lot, though, in those details, because it feels like there's a lot happening in the mise-en-scene in the background that's like little clues and things that is like more Americana pop culture kind of stuff. And it's just too hard to tell. The scene where he and 12 are in bed and the pillows are these giant pillows with some image on them that looks like old children's books or westerns or something. And I'm just like, that feels like it's really important and I just can't make it out. Do not know what it is. On that kind of note, though, also, like looking up all these old white men, Harvey Lembeck included, and just being like, wait, how many times is Harvey Lembeck in this film, or is it just old white guys with mustaches? I think he is in it 4 or 5 times, different characters. Quotation marks.
He's credited as Old George in the credits, which is odd because I'm like, okay, so is he actually the older version of our main character, kind of revisiting his past? Is he really the protagonist rather than younger George? And I think there's even another George in the credits, like the youngest George, but I know for sure there's 2 Georges in the credits.
So in the opening scene, the person doing the announcing and telling the joke, I believe that's Harvey Lembeck.
It definitely sounded like him.
I think that Mark Damon is in that chorus as one of the singers/dancers as George. So you have young and older George in the same sequence. And I do think they are each other figments of their own imaginations. This film is that like existential, surreal strangeness that they are like both coexisting and not coexisting together, that neither actually exists or something.
That song that you're talking about is by Paul Serrato, who, he has had a huge career. Well, not huge, but he's had a career as well.
There's more online about him than in this film.
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole thing like, he managed a paperback gallery in Greenwich Village where he met Jackie Curtis. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And he has an official website. I'm like, okay, great. So does William Sachs. But yeah, I don't know why Sachs could never get this one out there, because this is all original music for the film. And usually that's like always the sticking point where it's like, oh no, there was a song in here for 30 seconds, so we can't let you put this out. I'm like, what?
Supposedly the negative was lost. It was just gone, which is probably likely. I did hear an interview with him where, because it was released in Italy, that he sent an internegative to Italy. So there's a possibility that somewhere out there in Italy there is an internegative that could be found and sourced. But there's just no drive for anybody to find it at this point, which is really quite bewildering. So I watched it twice. And the first time was I watched it with my partner and she was like, that was good. Don't quite know what to make of it. Bit fairly abstract, but like a good, interesting film. And then I watched it a second time. And by the time I got to the end of the second time, I was just like, I feel real bad vibes, like way more than I did the first time. And then I watched the opening sequence again immediately after watching the end. It was just like, this is a circle of hell. This film's got something. Even like the first time around, I was not quite got something as much as then my return to it and was like, whoa, wait, this is, and that, and this, and this, and is that, and it was just like, oh man, this is something. Like, there's so many films out there that have survived and lasted longer. Like I was trying to remember desperately what I thought of it, but it kept reminding me of the Jack Nicholson's directorial debut Drive, he said, for being this kind of like revolutionary response, like the youth, men, this is what's happening in America at this time, experimental avant-garde. And I remember hating that film and being so bored by it and so annoyed by it. And this, I did not have that experience at all. And I watched the trailer for Drive, he said, trying to stimulate some memory of it. And it was like, it's hard to gauge just from a trailer, but it's like the difference between, and I think part of the reason why this has disappeared is because it is an experiential film. Like, it's not a statement film. There's not a specific ideology, or there's it's rattling the cages just by the terrible weirdness and severance of experience for people at that time and ongoing, of the destruction of that they have experienced just because people in power, it's like this or it's like that. And because there's nothing tangible like to latch onto, it is harder for people to get excited about it. But at the same time, it means that 60 years, 50 years later, it still has this punch because it's not tangled up in whatever little flame is burning in that person's heart at the time when they made the film. It actually feels like an experience of the world. And that's why, as I said, watching it the second time and realizing how the end just folds back into the beginning, that it's a circle of hell. And there's some great, wonderful joys in there because there are positive memories, but it also just that way it keeps like cutting it off.
The whole way that Sachs interconnects everything too, because it's like by the time you get to the ending, which I won't jump ahead to that quite yet because we're still in the early mid-section, I know, of the pod.
A long way.
I know, but it's like when it hits you, it's like my brain started going back to, oh God, this is all connected. Because, when the film, and it's so brilliant the way it does it, because at first, like, you're like, okay, we definitely get the impression this guy's has been through Vietnam, and he'll hallucinate like a severed foot in like a meat section of a grocery store, and which Waldbaum's, which I looked up, which was a very popular chain of grocery stores in New York that went out, that got bought up and absorbed by A&P, and then that closed. So that was sad. I love old business history, but you're like, okay, it's PTSD. And then by the time you get to the end, you're like, it's PTSD, all right. But you realize the severity of it. I do feel like it is a statement film, though, because I definitely feel like it is anti-war. And sadly, because humanity, we can never learn our lessons as a species. Like, because I do get, it doesn't get lost in dated rhetoric, which can be a problem with some films at the time. It's got just a universal message in a way with that. But it's his whole speech about people in the bubbles and referring to cars as turds and all of this. And it's because people, every day people just go on in their lives. And as long as they're in the bubble and they don't have it in their shores, it's like it doesn't exist. And that's sad. That's applicable, I think, any period of time. And again, unfortunately, because that's also how bad things really sneak up on people. They don't think, it's like, awareness is good, just in general. But the way everything is interconnected, I wouldn't say this is like a perfect film. It's still draggy in parts, particularly in the middle section, but there is a power to it. I love Ben, your whole thing of a circle of hell. That's definitely very present, but it's the way it's done is initially incredibly subtle. It's so easy for anybody doing this kind of message to just go full tilt boogie and just go over the top with it. And instead he pulls back, and some of it's interlaced with like surrealist imagery. It's interlaced with these weird bits of vaudeville and old showbiz kind of razzle dazzle. But in a way, by the time you get to the end, that almost makes it more powerful, because I think the danger, if you show all of your cards at once from the beginning, by the time you get to a powerful ending, you're numb. You see, there's that chance of being overexposed as a viewer. The way this film does it is really fascinating, and it is really powerful because it ends up being quite the gut punch.
We mentioned some characters that show up multiple times, and there's also, like, he goes in towards the beginning to a movie company, and he's got a script and everything. That guy who runs the movie company, he comes back multiple times. But the one I really noticed was Bonnie Inch, who she seems to show up at least 3 times. I think she might be in that kind of adultish film towards the beginning where it's she's got a rose on her ass.
She's got the rose tattoo, and she's in the Orange Julius diner, which happens immediately before that scene. She definitely returns in the Western diner soda joint, and she's serving him in the supermarket as well with 11, I think it was. Yep. Yeah, so there's at least those 4.
Her only other credited role was another William Sachs film with The Incredible Melting Man, where she played a nurse, and that's it. That was her film career. But yeah, she shows up multiple times in here, and I'm just like, okay, what does she have to do with this? And at first I thought, I was like, well, is she like girls 1 through 10 or something? Like, what is this? But
she was so much woman, she was all not the first 9 or something, first 10.
Just rolled all into one. Yeah.
What's cool is the ass tattoo. In the credits, it's Spider Webb, who was this really renowned like tattoo artist in New York, operating when that was illegal. Like, he was like a cool countercultural underground figure who also, with more classic adult connections here, was good friends with people like Annie Sprinkle.
I had here Rosie's tattoo credited as Spider Webb, who appeared in Albert Jacoma's 1988 VHS film titled Tattoo Vampire and appeared in 1975's SOS Screw on the Screen, which Ralph Bode was also director of photography on.
Oh my God. And I love Screw on Screen. SOS is a fun, if anybody likes countercultural irreverence, like that film, it has hardcore in it. It's not erotic. I mean, it's Screw Magazine made it, okay? That should tell you everything right there. But it is a lot of fun. I tried finding online and see if there was like a copy of Tattoo Vampire, because I saw that too, and I'm like, I have to see this because I love shot on video horror. It shares a title with a great Blue Oyster Cult song. I must see this. So if anybody can get a line on that, let us know.
This is the hard to find episode in general. I was trying to find William Sachs's first 3 short films. I was like, nah.
I found that interesting because there was an interview with him by, I think it's Christopher Olson, where he says, this is Sachs says, I started making films in the London Film School, which was called the London School of Film Technique at the time. I was there 1 year and made 3 short films. The first was Dear Mrs. Smith, a 3-minute film about an injured soldier. He is picked up on a stretcher, carried for a short distance, and lowered into a pine box. The soldiers bring the lid. When the lid is lowered, everything goes black. The entire film was one shot from the POV of the dead soldier. That's in this movie. I don't know if he just reused his own film, but that sequence is in this film. Like, there's the 2 soldiers, the one skinny guy and the other guy who seems a little older, and he's got the cigarettes and he offers the cigarette to the younger guy. Like, that whole sequence is in this film.
He has a tendency to cycle back around in interesting ways. I heard an interview where he mentioned that he actually remade Breakfast as like a 17-minute film. And he was in San Francisco. And I was just like, wait, you mean there's 2 Breakfast short films that I can't find?
Breakfast, about a U.S. space capsule that lands on another planet. A giant pregnant woman picks it up, cracks it over the frying pan, and a double-yolked egg falls out and cooks while the Star-Spangled Banner plays. This film won a lot of prizes at film festivals.
They must have been circulating it through like the school circulating it, because in an interview I listened to, he said he was already back in America when it was blowing up at festivals in Europe. And he was trying to get back there, and it ended up in Mexico for a bit and then San Francisco or vice versa. And I don't know. I think he then managed to get back to Rome. That's when he started working there. Like, the stories that this guy has, trying to keep track of them all is just like nuts. Because the reason he ended up in London was because he was in business school and he hated it. So he got kicked out because he hypnotized somebody and then couldn't de-hypnotize. Then they were like, it's actually illegal to do that, so we have to punish you. And so he like bailed on that and then joined the Air Force before Vietnam had kicked off. And he joined the Air Force because I want to go and have adventures. I want to be a writer. And he figured, like, that's the easy way. The one thing I don't want to do is be a medic because I hate all like the blood and guts and everything, which is particularly ironic given his filmography. And but he found out if you did really well in the courses, then you could choose where you went to next, like for the second year. And so he went to London. And the first thing that happened to him when he got to London was the mortuary scene in this film, where he was sent to go and footprint to the prints of a foot of a pilot who had crashed their plane. And they always did prints of pilot's feet because quite often the only thing that survived was the feet in the boots. And so he was standing, the guy gets there and he's, okay, where's this guy? I've got a footprint. He's, oh, it's in the sink. And it's just like a sink full of formaldehyde with a foot in it. He's, oh, okay, can I have 2 pairs of gloves? And the guy's like, no, it's cleaner than a dinner plate. It's fine. It's in formaldehyde. And just like basically most of that scene that's in the film really happened to him. And he attributes that to being his interest in body in pieces kind of stuff, which does recur a lot in these films. And in the recurring kind of thing, like, I'm not a big fan of Incredible Melting Man, but oh my God, part of me would love to see an edit where you edit in everything of There Is No 13 as the internal world of the Melting Man, because that's what it feels like, that this person who's been sent off on a mission and comes back disintegrated and is going through all these chaotic, like, interconnected pieces of fantasy and memory and everything. And there was something that he did keep coming back to with that, which is fascinating.
His filmography is fascinating because, like, after watching this, I was looking up and I'm like, I know, like, William Sachs. I'm like, oh my God, he did Van Nuys Boulevard, which I love. I do love that movie, but that is, you want to talk about a million miles away. Like, the man that gave us the film that gifted us characters like Big Chooch. Because everybody's watched this, they'll get this. Nobody calls Chooch a creep, man. Like, it's Van Nuys Boulevard's a lot of fun. That is bizarre to me. It's almost like if the only thing you'd seen of Robert Downey Sr. was Redded Lips. Like, it's weird, very weird. Maybe somebody should do, like, we're getting a lot of, like, more obscure filmmakers and directors, auteurs getting their due with these sets. Like, on Blu-ray, it'd be nice for something. For Sachs, we still have him. That does sound morbid.
We don't, though. I believe he passed away.
Yeah, it was pancreatic cancer.
I knew Damon had passed.
When I saw it was pancreatic cancer, I was not surprised. That shit will take you in a minute.
Well, never mind.
Yeah, him and Mark Damon. Yeah, I know. I was very surprised because I had been in contact with Sachs several times over the last few years. I wrote the liner notes for Incredible Melting Man, which I also agree is not the greatest film, but I asked him some questions about it. And then he was just being kind of a prick about stuff. Like, I was trying to line up an interview with him for Survival of the Film Freaks, the documentary I helped produce a few years ago. And he was like, no, you're way too political and way too open about your political views. And I was just like, he was like, you post too much on your page. And I was like, yeah, but it's my page. I can post whatever the hell I want. He was like, no, like, don't do that kind of thing. And I was just like, what? And he was like, and plus you, what was it? Like, you don't have voices from both sides. And I was just like, yeah, because I just eliminate anybody who is a Trump supporter. I'm sorry, but I can't handle people that are trying to, openly put down people who I love, people who I care about. Like, if your whole political basis is based on hate, I can't really support you. I'm sorry. So we got into this whole back and forth about how much he loves to argue. And I was just like, yeah, I'd rather not argue about things. Like, it was that whole almost debate me, bro kind of thing. And I was just like, yeah, thanks, Mr. Sachs. I'm kind of done talking with you. But then I was like, well, maybe I'll ask him if he wants to be back on this episode. And I went to look and I was like, oh yeah, he's dead. Whoops.
We call it the tall man effect in our house, where there are certain people that you think are still alive for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh shit, they died a few years ago. But then there are people that you think are dead. And then you see something and you're like, oh my God, they're alive. And then you feel terrible.
How did Gary Busey outlive Wings Hauser? How did that happen?
You want to talk about? I'm still grieving. I love Wings Hauser.
I only found out yesterday, and the first thing I did was like, wait, Gary Busey is still alive, is he? My God, how did that happen?
Busey's got to outlive us all. He's going to be like the Keith Richards of character actors. Like, it's weird, the collective conscious, though, where it's like there are just certain people like that. I hate hearing that he was like an argument bro, though, because I can't deal with that kind of person.
It's just really funny because listening to him talk for about half an hour, I'll be like, my God, this guy's a prick. And then the other half hour, I'm like, oh man, I completely understand where he's coming from and why he's a prick. And I think I would have got along with him really the next half hour, like, he's a prick. And it's like, he definitely had a strange life. There was a lot of stuff in this. I was like, oh, this sounds and feels familiar, of like having been in a lot of places, but it never clicking over into more than this side stuff. And then just the fact that one of the interviews where he was talking about how he liked being a film doctor more, which we haven't mentioned yet. For those who don't know, film doctors are the people that they call in to fix the film when it's gone wrong or producers are unhappy or whatever. And he apparently was a very successful and popular and widely used film doctor. And there's a couple of them we know of. Most of them, they won't reveal what they were, obviously. And he said that he actually preferred being a film doctor because the producers left you alone and he could just get on with the job and do it without people messing about, because to the producers, the disaster had already happened and he was the trusted person to fix it. But if he was the filmmaker, then the producers would never leave him alone and they'd always be getting into it and making his life difficult and hard, and he didn't work well with people doing that style. And so, oh man, like the amount of therapy that he probably didn't do to deal with being the person who he should hate. Like to do the job that he wants to do, he has to be the person who fucked up other people's films. And like he maybe saved a couple of films, sure, but like the psychic kind of, that'll do bad things to your head, like living for like that for 30, 40 years. It's not, I don't envy him at all. And there's so much stuff where it was like taken off him and redone this way and redone that way, like to the point where it's almost like every film is a different example of how you can be screwed over as a maker, whether it's like completely re-editing it in the process or as Judgment, aka Hit with a Z, which was just like relabeled and promoted as a gang film post Boys in the Hood success because it had young Cuba Gooding Jr. in it, but is actually like a satire about the legal system and judges, which has a scene where Elliot Gould hypnotizes Karen Black and they can't dehypnotize her because he took that for the experience. But anyway, I got to find Hits. When I saw I'm like, what? I'm looking at Hits of like 1992, Elliot Gould, Karen Black, Cuba Gooding Jr. What were these? Oh, it was actually made in 1987 and then only released because yada, yada, yada. He got screwed over so many different ways. And he does seem like he was a genuinely interesting, thoughtful person who really was doing some quite genuinely avant-garde stuff, working with techniques and materials and things way ahead of its time. And he just flipped out the fart crack of history.
Well, at least we'll always have Galaxina.
I only watched that for the first time. I think the only Sachs film I'd seen, I still haven't seen Van Nuys Boulevard. The only Sachs film I'd seen up until really, I'm trying to find it, but in Australia, it's not here yet. I was The Incredible Melting Man, and I watched recently Galaxina, and I watched The Force Beyond. Have you seen The Force Beyond, aka Secrets of the Gods?
No.
So it's his 1970s paranormal documentary about aliens and Bigfoot and conspiracy stuff. And I was watching and I was like, this is incredible. And it took me until halfway through to realize that it was a satire. He was actually making fun of all the people and was like, oh, sorry, I have 21st century brain and you can't tell the difference anymore. This feels normal. This is the way that people talk normally about this stuff. Like a giant, like green font comes off diagonally across the screen, is like Bigfoot country or something. I was like, what is going on? And it was just like the way he slid from talking about UFOs to Bigfoot and everything at the time would have been slightly more like crazy and weird. Whereas now it's, oh no, like, why aren't you talking about Jack the Ripper too? Like, it's really fun and ridiculous and silly. And so then after that, I watched Galaxina and was like, okay, this is not a great film, but I feel like I have your comedic vibe carrying across from that, and was just in the right groove with Galaxina. And I like one of the interviews I heard with him, he was saying like one of the characters keep telling these bad jokes and all these people thought that they were his bad jokes that he thought was good. And he's like, I failed in the writing at that time because they were meant to be bad jokes. They weren't meant to be funny. And everybody thought I was writing bad jokes. Bad jokes. I feel like that is almost his entire filmography was like, no, I was making this thing, but I either got screwed over or screwed it up myself. And it came out either too serious or too stupid. And he like couldn't get that balance. And that's where There Is No 13. I don't think he was looking for the balance there, but whatever his warped regurgitation blender, whatever that of his does work in There Is No 13. Like it's not about balance. It's not about balance. There's anything like that. It's just like the detonation of nostalgia and memories and Americana through genuinely as avant-garde, like advanced garde probing into something more. And that's like that coming out of this film, I was like suddenly in Walter Benjamin and Guy Debord and the Society of the Spectacle, because it was like, I am struggling to make sense of all this, but he feels like he's directly responding to these things. Sorry, that was a cat going past. Don't knock over stuff. Don't knock over stuff. Like very much responded. There's some of the quotes. I'm like, oh man, I was trying to find my book so I could make more sense of these to get the original quotes. But like in Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle, he wrote, neither death nor procreation is grasped as a law of time. Time remains immobile like an enclosed space. Which feels like that's a better description of the plot synopsis of the film than the plot synopsis we have.
Then a man recounts the 13 women he's had sex with, which is really not here. I mean, we just get one scene where he's talking with the one girl, and she's like, "Oh, give me your body count," basically. And he's like, "I don't know, 9, maybe 10." And then she's like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll be 11." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." That's Margaret Markov, by the way. Margaret Markov and Jean Jennings look kind of similar to me in this, just because I guess they're both young blondes, but very, very different deliveries, I have to say. Jean Jennings is very much more sedate than Margaret Markov, but I really need to see Black Mama, White Mama, because I don't know if I've ever seen that one. And I know I've seen The Arena, but she was very, very striking. I was really very taken by Markov when I saw her.
She got that great hair. She was like this mane of just like waist length blonde hair. And she has a great presence. There's something very kinetic about her that definitely sets her. It's always easy to cast people that look pretty, but you got to have something else. You got to be able to bring something else to the screen. And she does. It's so funny though, because her character at first, I was like, is this a red flag? I'm like, you first meet somebody and they're like, this is our property. And then it's like, how many have you that I'm like, oh dude, get out. She's gonna be a bunny boiler before you know it. But obviously it didn't quite go that way, thankfully. With Jean, I almost wondered if she was dubbed over, because there's this weird accent. Jean Jennings she was from Florida. She almost sounds like there's like almost a European accent going on here.
I noted that too. It's quite, but it feels like youthful wankerness. Like I am affecting this kind of personality, because it feels so put on in like a way that does feel like she feels real at the same time as she feels like she's acting.
Youthful wankerness. I know.
The most beautiful.
She has a speech about her parents dying in a firework factory accident.
I'm an orphan.
Oh.
My parents were killed when the fireworks factory that they worked in blew up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It must have been beautiful.
Did it happen at night?
Yes. And everybody said it was the most beautiful spectacle they had ever seen. People saw it for hundreds of miles.
Wow.
Super stilted after there. I was like, what the hell was that delivery?
That was wild. Because I'm like, it was very beautiful. And it's like, what? Is this what Quaaludes, even Quaaludes and youthful wankerness? And you just getting this like weird bitch about, I'm an orphan. And he's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, oh, it's okay. It's just so beautiful.
And like the first time, sorry to bounce back and forth between the two women, but the first time you see Margaret Markov, she's holding this giant inflatable light bulb.
You mean lamp bulb? Lamp bulb? No. Does it lamp up? Again, the bad joke. Is it a lamp bulb? She's like, wait, did you call it a lamp bulb? Does it lamp up? No, it lights up. What?
Yeah, and I'm just like, well, what is this thing? Yeah, what's the meaning of this giant lamp bulb? You know, like, yeah, that was so strange for me. And that they go to a castle. I'm like, what? That's like 34 minutes in when they finally have this talk about his body count, and then her saying, like, call me 11.
And then it cuts to like a close-up shot of a beach with the water coming in. And I started having like flashbacks to The Terror and Targets, because it's like they had that VHS, like old 60s beachy, weird sound. And I'm like, wait, is this going to start like break? Was it already doing like a Targets? Or is this a reference to Roger Corman? Because there's all this, and I'm just like, I don't even know, man. The second time around, that's where the massacre happened. Maybe the stand in Vietnam that looks about as Vietnam as every British representation of Vietnam I've ever seen in the 60s and 70s. There's a big concrete bunker. That means it's Asia. What? We have tuffets of grass everywhere on a beach. Then it was like going back. It was like, oh, okay, so this is the first time that we're starting to flip back to what might be the place where he experienced the trauma and violence that has put him where he is. But it's also coming after, like, when you're talking about red flags, they're driving to the castle and there's the three or four men naked being whipped on the roadside as they're driving there. I'm like, is that a red flag? What?
Well, in real life, probably, unless you've signed up for a fun resort.
William Sachs himself said this isn't a horror film. And I'm like, it's not a horror film as Think of Melting Bad as a horror film, but bad vibes. Just bad vibes through and through.
I got a little Messiah of Evil from this for some reason. Maybe it was the grocery store scene.
I have that note right here. I'm like, Messiah of Evil. What are they?
The beach.
I can't fucking. It was.
Yeah.
There's something about the beach, but it was also like the empty world, like that the world felt dead, that everything had moved on, and it was just like the ghosts that hadn't caught up, which is the Messiah of Evil through and through. Like he feels like he's one of the living dead in parts, not as like a zombie living dead, but just, and not because of his physical disability. Like he's just been sacrificed. And this is the ghost of a person who's been sacrificed for a greater meaning that is actually meaningless and not productive to anything positive.
When they had that sequence of the person being carried on the stretcher, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if that's him in that stretcher. And then when they put the pine box lid over it, I was just like, oh, okay, so whoever we're watching is dead. And then I started to get thoughts of, is this a Jacob's Ladder kind of thing? Is he dead, but he doesn't want to admit that he's dead? Is he dead, and this is all just a dream of his? Like, is this his reminiscences and the way that it's all kind of jumbled together? Because there is this whole theme throughout the entire movie of him wanting to be a filmmaker and, you know, showing up, and he's like, oh, I've got the script. And then there's the want ad that he sees, and that eventually takes him back to the VA hospital. So I was like, oh, maybe he's in the VA hospital this entire time, because that's where we start. That's where we end up going. And there's this whole thing, too, of him saying, like, it's my birthday, and then we have a birthday party, and we have all this other stuff. And I'm just like, okay, it's all of these things coming together all at once. Maybe this is, like, his last birthday. But, yeah, we never really get all of that. And obviously, I don't want a clear-cut explanation. What's the fun in that? But it's just like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of things to think about here. And then, yeah, like him going to the VA hospital and being given that assignment of making that short film about feet and about footprinting. It's so interesting the way that he mixes like animation and collage and all of these things into this little short film, shows it to the doctors, and just no response. Not that was good, not that was bad. They just all stand up and walk out. And I was like, well, I guess that's your response right there.
But I love how that scene opens because he's been hired to make this medical film about how to print a foot. And he opens this presentation by saying, I am finally going to make a medical film that's not boring. And that could be part of the reason why they walked out. It could have been a bunch of stuffy doctors going, how dare you insult the fine art of medical cinema?
That doctor that hires him, who's taking the brain out of the dummy, and just his delivery, talking about deliveries, holy shit, his is fantastic. I love him.
Mighty small brain for such a big guy. Very strange. Have you ever seen such a small brain in such a big guy?
No. How'd he die?
He was drunk. Died when he choked on his own vomit.
I love him too. I in my notes I wrote, this is a man that owns an Ascot unironically. There's something very I don't know. It's like, I don't like to describe it, but just like this great theatrical. It's if Criswell and Terry Thomas had a baby. I wanted more of him. Maybe not in this film, though, like another film.
Apparently he's in Mr. Popper's Penguins. My character named Reginald.
Really?
Are we sure that's not Terry Thomas?
I looked him up, and he's like in like lots of indies and shorts and occasional TV movies, and not much at all. And then suddenly, right at the end of his career, just before he died, he's in Mr. Popper's Penguins, and then he plays the old Ant-Man, I think it was, in Avengers Endgame, and then he dies.
Oh, okay. The old Ant-Man when they're trying the time travel experiments. Okay.
Don't know. I haven't seen it.
Wow, I haven't seen it either.
Well, I've seen it 1,000 times, but yeah. Okay. Wow.
So there you go. You can see more of it. But the whole thing with the footprinting thing is fascinating because obviously he's taking it from a real thing that happened to him. But it has so much meaning for the film because if he is, spoiler alert, we haven't actually talked about it yet, but amputee, he seemingly doesn't have hands or feet. And how do you identify somebody? Your fingerprints are a form of identity. And he has lost all the ways that somebody would give him an identity in that clinical kind of way. So it's like it's almost it's him like being forced to confront a lack that he has in that regard. So much of the film feels like he's, like you said, you get these little like interjections of stuff that like are clues/memories, which could be the trauma trying to reassert itself in his delusions, escapes from that reality or whatever. But then it also could be like that he's trying to just exist and be and is constantly being brought back to ways that he is not, that he doesn't exist in the society anymore, in this world, that all of these traditional markers have been removed from him as possibilities, like on a much more existential level. Which just feels like very Albert Camus, a real like just existential dread, and Beckett. There's getting some Beckett vibes here as well for just like impossible trap.
Yeah, and you're right. I totally forgot about that final shot where it's him in the bed with no arms and no legs. And then I'm also like, well, if he got his dick shot off, then there is no 13. But like her whole thing, when we meet that mysterious 13, she's just like,
You must be number 13.
There's no 13.
Who are you?
I'm no one. I don't exist.
I don't understand.
Could you try?
May I touch you?
No, you mustn't. If you touch me, I'll vanish. I don't exist. I'm nobody.
Why not?
Because my father was killed in the war before he met my mother.
Well, if you did exist, would you have been number 13?
Perhaps.
Well, it doesn't really matter that you don't exist.
Why not?
I can't touch you anyway.
Okay, so it's like your no 13 is because you don't exist, as opposed to our main character's no 13 because he's never going to have sex with this woman or maybe have sex again. I'm just like, okay, that's a very, very different way of thinking about these things.
Doesn't 13 say something that her father had been off to war?
So even like the way that like he says why not first and she says why not, they're like a yin and yang. It was sort of like a two halves of the same circle. So it's like the feminine representation of annihilation in this world and the masculine representation of annihilation. And it's like women don't really play a part of this film despite what the blurbs say. And the film isn't trying to make a film that's not about women. It's not trying to exclude women. It's there. It's just done in the same sort of, what's the word? Like everything's very obtuse. Like it's not looking at things as it's talking about them. But then at the same time, like with the ending, do you remember like the beginning? Because when I watched this, I went back and watched what he says. When he's talking about what he says, I was like, Jesus, this is a bit fucked. Because he says, where is it? My notes are a mess. I've got to get better at notes. Okay, so first of all, the film opens with a joke about dismemberment. The Harvey Lembeck character person, whichever one he is at this point, if he's introducing a vaudeville show, tells a joke about an Italian POW who needs to get a limb dismembered, amputated. And he says, oh, yes, I'm okay with that, but can you put it in with the bombs that you drop on Italy tonight? And they're like, sure. And then the next day, we have to amputate this limb, and same thing. Can you put in with the bombs? And then like on the third night, you had to okay, and okay, as long as it can be. And he's like, nope, we're on to you. We've figured out that you're trying to escape one piece at a time. And it's like, oh my God. So the joke is not only about dismemberment, it's about escape. It's about freedom. It's about returning home, even if you're in pieces. And then immediately follows that by saying, I know there's one thing you people really like. People that can move. That's the line. People that can move. There's nothing you like better than watching people move. It's like, oh my, they just set up the whole film for us to not be happy about it because it's a film about a guy who can't move. He's a sick bastard. It's all, and then it got straight to him in the hospital talking about, have you ever been to an army hospital? And it's super grim. And it's I've completely forgot about that as I'm watching the films. There's like what we were saying before about like, it's not really foregrounding and stuff. And like, oh no, it foregrounds it immediately in 3 scenes of dialogue that are each separate, connected, and then immediately like exits that in such a way that you forget it unless you watch the film and then hit play immediately and you realize it's in this weird loop where the ending is immediately responding. The beginning is immediately responding to an ending of a man who has no limbs and can't move with jokes about dismemberment and how audiences love people who move.
Do you think maybe that's why he calls cars turds? That he's just because they represent the movement that he can not have again? And then that crazy, the Markov character where she's like, oh yeah, put on your helmet when they're driving the convertible and stuff. And just the freedom of the open road that they have other than him having to hold on to that lamp bulb super tight.
The whole thing about the tongue, because he makes like a silly face and she's do that again. And she's like, you have a tongue. That's quite rare in these parts. Or
tickling leading to violence as well.
Oh, yeah, that scene was strange. And then even when he's in the elevator, the very first time we see him and the elevator doors open up and there's that gangster looking guy with a machine gun that shoots at him. And then they cut away and then he just walks onto the elevator. We get a couple elevator scenes because there's one later on when he's wandering the city again, and he's doing that whole thing about the turds and talking about the air conditioners dripping on him and everything. There's another shot in an elevator with another old man. You know, you talked about those old men with cigars, and they are everywhere in this.
Sometimes I miss the city. I hate it, but I still miss it. The streets smell like puke. The air is damp and heavy as it moves out of the way of the people. Pea brains, encased in physical human forms. The days are gray and the air is heavy as it pushes the millions of pea brains lower into themselves and eventually to their overpriced, dilapidated pods. The pea brain rides home with other pea brains in snake-like sweltering turds, piled one after another, reddish-brown, with windows brown, in horizontal, stink-flavored straws under concrete. There are turds above the flavor straws. There are turds everywhere. Millions of turds piled one after and before another. There are red turds, blue turds, green turds, truck turds, convertible turds, little turds, big turds, but mostly yellow turds, which pump out their black poison behind them, which is scooped up and swallowed by the pea brains and those not fortunate enough to have air bubbles.
And something that's hitting me, like, because Ben, when you were talking earlier about just a lot of the troubles that Sachs ran into throughout his whole career, because our character here is a filmmaker. Like, he was going into filmmaking before he got drafted, I'm assuming. And do you think there's almost like a parallel, though, of just how filmmakers and directors get cut off at the limb metaphorically? Because thinking about like how the way that his film is reacted to at the medical institution, even though it's like really creative, I was like, man, he got super ambitious for this, what is basically just like a trial run film to see if he gets a job. But I also noticed he didn't actually use the severed foot that he was supposed to use. He did everything but that.
And reuse the end gag as well. No tattoo, that one.
I love that. I can't help it. Maybe it's my inner like 1960s low, like no budget sexploitation self. I love a butt with the end on it. It's so stupid. It just always makes me smile. And there's a little baby stepping in pie, doing the footprint, but it was so creative. I was actually like, you know what? This is smart because it's honestly like, he's showing you how to footprint without actually being like, here's a literal severed human foot. And that's like, the doctor's like, you're going to have to cut off each toe and dip it. I was like, God damn.
That was his wife, I believe, in that formaldehyde. And then I think it was her with the scissors cutting off the paper toe. And I don't know if the girl in there, I don't think that was his daughter because I think he met his wife on this film.
Oh, wow. Okay. I kind of wonder because usually with these kind of films, you find out, okay, it's, again, going back to Robert Downey Sr., and Pound.
He met his wife in Roe. So I think they had been married for a little bit at this point, but I don't know if they were kids. I don't think it was a child that old.
Yeah, it was credited to Randy Geller, Randee, is the little girl in George's film. So, and Bonnie Sachs as the girl in formaldehyde.
The interesting thing about that film is that when he's meeting with the producers with his script and they're like, no, we just want tits and ass and Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden and nudity and all this kind of thing. It's a sex sales spectacle. And he's trying to make something more meaningful. And then he's tasked with making a film for communicating information and he hands in something that's much more entertaining and feels aimed at kids. So it's a mirror image of the earlier one where he's the one failing to be meaningful in education, even though it's great and it's fun. It's like, it isn't what they ask for. And it's a whole bunch of stuffy doctors. Like they want the boring medical film. This is why, like when I said like the complicated figure of Sachs is he's not dealing with stuff, but yet he's dealing with a lot of things from a lot more angles than some filmmakers. Like even when he's getting railing against this society of the spectacle and TNA and exploitation and everything, it's, I don't know, matter of fact's not quite the right word, but there's a practicality to it that it's like, it doesn't feel like someone getting, but the arts are important. It's more, but I want to do something else. And then like when he's tasked with doing something else, he does the like nice version of the things he didn't want to do. It's interesting. It's complicated. It's messy. I like it.
There's something that the distributor producer character says that really stuck with me because when George tells him times are changing and the guy says times are changing, but the audience isn't. This producer's stuck in a times, but given the treatment this film got outside of Italy, it's sadly true. And it's like thinking about the whole thing of what's this film like intentionally oppressed too in America. It's like the main Vietnam War centric film that came out the same year that this one did was Hearts and Minds, which now it's very easy to get a hold of and Criterion has it out. But it was like, that was a very controversial film and like Columbia refused to distribute it. And it was basically suppressed. That's a sneaky way things get censored. I find in modern American times, it's never so much like something super obvious for the government. It says we've banned it. Instead, it's more nobody's going to distribute it.
It's a free market at work.
Well, it's like Captain Milkshake from 1970. That's a virulent anti-war film that other than the filmmakers selling it, you can't get your hands on it, And it was wonderful. This whole thing of this guy coming back from Vietnam and just not being able to handle it. And what was it? The stuff at home is shot in black and white. The stuff in the war is shot in color because it's like that's the only time he actually felt alive was when he was in the wartime. And it's like, it was 1970. We're still like, Ben, were asking as far as like, when was the war? And like, I mean, the beginning of the whole conflict, I honestly can't tell you because there was all the French involvement, then eventually starts to move into the American involvement. But I remember even Kennedy sending troops over there. So it had been going on for well over a decade.
I knew that it was wrapping up around this time, but I wasn't sure exactly when. And it does seem 74 was about when it was like really over, as much as it could be. It's never over. Sorry, Rambo Twitch.
It's only over when I say it's over. Yeah.
This was one of the first American films to really tackle it and not in a way of being like, such and such was in the war, move on. Most of the films were like that. And so it is entirely possible that it was leaned on. I have heard far stupider stories about what Army intelligence and the CIA was up to at this time with all of the spare time that they had. That somebody sitting there watching every film that comes out that relates to it and going, they didn't even need to watch the whole film. You just watch the first 5 minutes and you react to that because they're talking about the veteran hospitals. And you could talk about the war. You don't talk about the veterans. Not like that. You don't talk about them in pieces. You don't show the hospitals and the suffering. Even now, they don't really want to still talk about that aspect of the aftermath. And so I can imagine very easily someone watching just the first 5 minutes of this film and going, let's lean on some people and make sure this doesn't appear. And even down to the stories with it going to Berlin Film Festival, that, apocryphally, we are told that the jury loved it and thought it was the best film, but the people running the show were afraid there would be riots because there was such huge anti-American sentiment that it is very, very, very familiar to our current time, of that the pushback was just so intense that even though this film was obviously not pro, people were apparently turning the lights on in the cinema as protests and were yelling over it and everything like that just because it was American and about the war. It's really easy to imagine that it just got shuffled off to the side and no one noticed and no one cared, because who would? And it does seem likely to me, given how much it has disappeared. But Hearts and Minds, this has a connection to Hearts and Mind, because Ralph B. Bode, the cinematographer, was a second unit cameraman on Hearts and Mind. So that they're very present. They would have been aware right at the heart of the conversation around all of this. And that actually makes the film more fascinating. There is only really a couple of bits that confront it head on, but those bits do it head on in a way that was not happening in the 70s. And even now would feel a bit strange. This is hissed off Monty Python.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, especially with the way that it changes so often. I mean, just thinking about the Western scene, where it's kind of Western, kind of not. I mean, it's taking place in a diner to the point where it has the sliding door. It feels like it was a railroad car at some point. And it's the whole thing of him having Harvey Lembeck play music on the jukebox, as if it were a player piano. And then he ends up shooting one guy, but then there's the guy at the chessboard, and doesn't he end up just cutting that guy's hand off? So again, with the dismemberment stuff, I'm just fuck, yeah.
That bit he says, just pulls out the cleaver, chops his hand off, and says, "Sorry, stranger, I thought you were cheating." Which is just, that's American collateral damage. Sorry, we invaded your country because we thought you might be a domino. Really savage. But I have to say, I was looking at that guy and being that guy looked so familiar. He gets his hand cut off. He's American, so I don't know if it's Jan Saint or Jan Saint. I'll say Jan Saint. He is the street preacher in Frankenhooker.
I am so glad you said that, because there's another hint.
You went that way.
Yes, because Beverly Bonner is credited for playing a streetwalker. This is where I wish the print was cleaned up, because you can't really tell it's her. But Beverly Bonner, of course, is our beloved sex worker character in Basket Case.
Amazing.
I know, the connections in this film are insane.
And he would also play Santa in Jacob's Ladder.
Oh my God.
There is no 13 actually a weird, is it one of in Stephen King's The Dark Tower? It's one of the beams that connects the universes.
Going by the credits, which by the way, there's so many great tracking shots in this film. Beautiful. Even with the kind of not the best quality print we had to work with, you can still tell the level of just care and artistry. But there's that amazing tracking shot at the end when we get that just heartbreaking reveal. And you realize you're surrounded. There's all kinds of people that are various levels of amputee, and those are real veterans. This was shot at an actual hospital, and it was because there's what in the thanks, there's a veterans group of dismembered veterans, which again would not surprise me, because it's that doesn't make the country look good if this is what we did to the young men that we sent off for this. So we'll just put them off to the side and forget them. And again, the bubble, that's where you get Also, did you notice that like 11 and 12 are nurses? It's almost like a Wizard of Oz thing.
The ending is 100% doing the Wizard of Oz. They're all there. Every person who has appeared is back there again, except it's not like the Wizard of Oz because it's like they're not, they knew, it wasn't like you were there and you were there and you were there because they're all nowhere.
It's not a happy ending like the Wizard of Oz either, but it almost made me wonder, were 11 and 12 just like a fantasy?
Possibly. I think like I did see some people being like, oh, it's hard to tell what's like a few people who have seen it's like it's hard to tell what's real and not real. And I'm like, that's not the point. Like, it's not. It's much more European in the way that it's approaching that, where it's like he's obviously exact with how much he loves Fellini and all these people, and it is definitely leaning more to that. Oh no, you don't have to explain things. It's not necessarily, even though obviously the word absurdist mentioned a lot. It's like, no, it is actually more surrealist, and it just doesn't really matter. You just have to roll with it. And I think it's kind of like we mentioned Jacob's Ladder, and I've also seen a couple of people mention Johnny Got His Gun and how this film is similar to that. There's a couple of ways that it's really significantly different. It's because Johnny Got His Gun, like, you set you up from the beginning to know what's going on. So you're more like going with this person on a journey. Whereas in this film, we're not going with him on a journey. We're with him on whatever his quest is. And the structure reminded me a lot of modern video games. The way it's like these separate little enclosed spaces and entering into them knowing that there's going to be something, but not sure what it is. Just not coincidence exactly, but just fascinating how much it feels more like that kind of structure. Which in a video game, we don't think about how chaotic and strange and separated all the parts are. You just roll with it. But it actually reminded me more of, If There Isn't a 13 feels like somewhere like halfway between Johnny Got His Gun and Ambrose Bierce's An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which is Jacob's Ladder. But it's like the way that it differs from those is fascinating because it's like, in An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, the character is fleeing from something. They are trying to escape to something. Whereas our hero in this film is so lost. Like he's not even, he is seemingly somewhat questing for something, but it's so fragmented and severed and dismembered that he can't even put that together. And like thinking about this film and how it deals with violence and spectacle is also really fascinating because it is quite grotesque in parts, especially in the mortuary sequence, that the great mortician's pulling the brain out and making jokes about the guy's small brain to his large body and the hands and the feet and the meat. But it feels like a kind of 5 or 6 years before this, you have Bonnie and Clyde and the Wild Bunch, which is universally seen as being, if not a response to Vietnam, at least like a side effect of Vietnam, that you end up with this explosion of violence because of what people are experiencing, seeing what's on the news, etc. But also how the explosion of that kind of violence is also seen as a way of having, this was where I was disappearing to the Walter Benjamin and the guy that bored my brain was just breaking, that it's this like the collapsing of histories and the returning to transferring the horror of the violence into nostalgia and displacing it into the past as a way to let it go and excuse it and forget it. And then having the film penultimate scene be a Western, quite violent. We have a dismemberment. We have like multiple people dead, but it's all encapsulated in this actual collapsing of history, that it is seemingly like a train car diner, very modern. And in that way also reminded me of Lemonade Joe. Like it felt very Czech at times, the modern pop culture kind of collisions. I found that fascinating how much of this film is like very society of spectacle, but very much like refusing to be that. Like there's no catharsis in the violence. There's no release. There's no, here you go. So film writer Catherine Russell, she's got a great book on narrative mortality and death in cinema, in particularly new wave cinema. And she wrote that most of the violence in recent American film is grounded in a cyclical, repetitive schema of vengeance. And as that final scene appears to be that, like it's a cyclical, someone's coming back for revenge and this and that, and all the sheriff will finish him, but it's all stripped of everything. It's not pretending to have anything that all the other films are like doing. It just, no, you're just being confronted with this act of violence, almost like a slightly more successful version of Irreversible, of trying to strip out all the reasons and meanings for why you get to this cathartic act that you're allowed to enjoy as an audience. Instead, you're just displaced into this little mini prison filled with death. Fascinating.
Just so you know, the comic strip that is on the pillow behind them, that is from Gasoline Alley, which is a long-running comic from the U.S. I think it was started in 1918, and I don't know if it's still running today. I think it actually is, so...
There was a bunch of stuff in this where I'm just like, we need some old Americans here to explain who these people are. Because you were talking, there's one, I looked up the Orange Julius.
Oh God, Orange Julius, yeah.
And he's Buddy Clayton. And I managed to almost the shadow of information figure out that he's an old vaudeville dude. But there's so many, I bet money that all the old dudes are old vaudeville dudes, but the majority of them, the internet hasn't found a reason to remember them yet. So you just end up with, they were in one documentary or something and related to vaudeville. And it's like, okay, cool, piece of information.
And just so you know, the secret to Orange Julius is egg white powder and milk powder.
It's not penguin sweat.
That's the secret.
That's
Yeah. Despite the rumors to the contrary, yeah. And yeah, Heather, you're right about these tracking shots. There are some amazing ones that are going on. I mean, like I was saying, the whole thing with that short film that's in there when the guys are walking and they're in Vietnam, then suddenly they're in New York. So you've got that kind of great use of the camera. But yeah, those tracking shots, especially down the hallways at the VA hospital. I mean, the very first one, the first time we see Lembeck, and I love the way he slides into the frame and then starts telling that joke. And then, yeah, the camera just slowly pushing in on him, rolling down the hallway is fantastic.
Oh, God. And then that shot when he's with number 12 in bed and they embrace, and then it just starts pulling away. And it's almost like you're in a labyrinth of lamps and lighting and mirrors. And it's disorienting and it's beautiful. And it also feels like even in your first watch, you feel like this is going to lead to something bad, though. Again, going in again to Ben, your whole feeling about the vibe of this film is just, there's this just heaviness. And again, it's nothing super obvious. It's really just so riveting how everything is balanced.
And at the end of the film, after we visit George and we get back to the birthday song, and then we kind of move away from him, move out past all those people that we're talking about. Then we again go through the halls of the VA hospital, but this time it's teeming with life as opposed to the first time where it's just, there's Lembeck, there's the dancers and the piano player and the singer. That's it. It feels very abandoned, all that montage of all the empty hallways, empty areas. And now during the day, it's just filled with all of these people. And I love how when the credits start, because I think we go back to an elevator and we stop there, and that's when the credits roll. And then you still hear all the chatter and the voices and stuff. You hear all of the noise that's happening at the hospital.
I'm so glad we got to do this and that we got to see it. I would love for this film to get more eyes on it, even if, and it's something I can't implore, because I do feel and I don't know if you guys have run into this, I do feel like there's a newer sort of breed of film fan where it's if something isn't in this pristine restoration print, they're like, oh, I can't watch that. I've literally have met people that are like, oh, I can't. And I'm just ideally, of course, in a perfect world, it'd be great if everything was in this ideal situation. A lot of films aren't. There's still so many films that are just waiting. And in this case, well, probably if there's no negative, there's no negative. This is it. It's probably about as good as it's going to get.
This is the one place where I've been waiting for AI for, that we have good quality AI trained to look at something like this. And sure, maybe we'll never be able to get the pillar boxing, get rid of that, but to look at the image and just actually make it, clean it up, get the detail back in there. This is the one thing that I want AI to save these lost films, or even the one most of all, Mario Bava's Rabid Dogs, to go back and fix all those awful VHS clips that pop in every 6 seconds and make it a very difficult watch. That is definitely going to happen. That is at least one plus. But there is definitely, I don't haven't run into those people yet. But there's times where I'll watch something and I'll be like, actually, no, I don't need to see this like this. I can wait until it pops up. But that's with stuff that I know will one day pop up. When it comes to this is it, guys.
If you're listening to this and you feel like you might be like this, open your mind, because sometimes like it's better. Is it ideal? No, but what in life is ideal? Like sometimes you just take the riches where you can get them, and it's better to get a chance to see something that's great and that opens kind of your film experience than just than seeing Patch Adams. And
I hope that nobody that listens to the projection booth is one of these people that's like, oh, if it's not streaming, it doesn't exist for me. It's like, look behind us, look behind the three of us. I'm sure we all have piles of DVDs and Blu-rays, it's like, yeah, physical media, you need to have it in your life because you go to fucking Netflix, nothing before 1974 is streaming on there, like one movie from the 70s, maybe a few. And it's like, for fuck's sakes, guys.
It's like media breatharians, like just trying to survive on something that's not there.
To me, streaming is like a great appetizer, but you don't always need an appetizer for your meal. Like it's great if it's there, but physical media is where it's at because streaming also nothing's guaranteed. Things disappear all the time. And then you're just kind of left, oh shit, I was going to rewatch this movie. It's not there anymore. But if you own it, you don't have to worry about that.
I think if you are any people out there who are interested in this, but maybe do struggle with those kind of imposed limitations on quality, watch Videodrome before this and then immediately mainline this film, and just like you are experiencing a VHS broadcast from the interiority of someone's hell, and it's perfect.
I love that. Also, support the projection booth to become a patron.
I do have to say one thing before we wrap it up. There was one other person in the credits who, when I saw them, was like, oh, I know that name. Virginia Field, who was the assistant art director, would go on to be the art director and production designer on Friday the 13th. Yeah, I was like, actually, that's interesting. That really tactile Americana, like nostalgia, but dangerous. It was like, that makes a lot of sense that she would be involved in both. She also worked on The Strangers Watching, Exterminator 2, I'm assuming the half that William Sachs made. And for my own personal nostalgia filmography and Moving Violations, she was the art director on. So that was two. Virginia Field has imbued my childhood brain to a high degree with just two films.
Is that the comedy that Fred Willard has a part in?
I can't remember if Fred Willard is in it, but that weird skinny guy, and he gets the chainsaw and he's got the hockey mask on. It's like they all lose their licenses, and so they have to go to driving school. I think it's got like somebody's brother in it. Might be like Doyle Murray.
This sounds like something I saw a lot as a little kid on cable. You just unlocked like some memory.
Harrow Police Academy Comedies, 1985, directed by Neil Israel. John Murray. Not even Brian.
Brian. We didn't get Brian Doyle.
Jennifer Tilly, James Keat.
I love her.
The woman that played the Where's the Beef girl, a lady was in that, I think, too. Clara Peller.
Fred Willard, yep.
Bless Clara Peller. Yeah, and
Wendy Jo Sperber. Yeah, the cast is amazing.
Oh god, because there's this whole interaction with Wendy Jo Sperber and Fred Willard about, oh my god, Ben, this is wild. I saw this so much as a kid, like this, and dangerous.
Don Cheadle.
Oh
yeah, that was another Neil Israel Pat Proft joint. I talked with those guys for, what was that? Real Genius, I think.
Sally Kellerman. There you go. Moving Violations rewatch coming up.
All right, we're going to take a break and play a preview for next week's show right after these brief messages.
Some people think move is about moving. Some people think move is about the system breaking down.
You lousy kids, no respect for anything.
Some people think move is about the communication gap.
Blah, blah.
Some people think move is about the battle of the sexes.
I think you really are going crackers.
Did your wife serve ice cream?
No, Jewish.
Item breaketh the glass.
Some people think move is just an entertaining comedy. Some people think move is more than that.
I don't need this.
When we start picking up weird balls, I come for you first.
In short, some people think, and some people don't. And some people just move. It's pure Gould. Move. Rated R.
That's right. Our look at obscure films continues next week when we take a peek at Move. Get ready to have that soundtrack song stuck in your head. Until then, I want to thank my co-hosts, Heather and Ben. So, Ben, what's going on with you, sir?
Not a whole lot at the moment. In between things, I did a bunch of rushes for apple cider vinegar, which is like taking Netflix by storm and stirring up various amounts of dialogue on either side about shitty Australians and the health industry. It looked good from the 1,000 or so hours I watched of it, so I'd recommend that. It's not 1,000 hours long, just the rushes were. Otherwise, I'm just on Letterboxd as usual. You can find me there as Dissolve Pet, one word, DISSOLVEDPET. And I come say hi, and like I'm trying to make sense more when I write on there. Bear with me though. Sometimes I forget about the making sense part.
And Heather, what's keeping you busy?
I'll use this chance to mention I have some essay work that has popped up. The recent Arrow has released this beautiful edition of The Cell, which has many great supplements. And mad thanks to Alexandra Hella Nichols for bringing me on board for that, where I get to write about music video work and how that plays into the film and its director. And you can get that. That is currently available now. And TerraVision, I have essays on their new release of Dance or Die, which is a very fun, if you love low budget, mid-80s, Las Vegas, horror, mobsters, ballet, modern dance. Yes, please. Cocaine. Oh my God. Check it out. My essay is on that, as well as their release of the very Technicolor, gorgeous early 80s Korean horror film, Suddenly in the Dark. So those are both through TerraVision. For anything else in other sundries, go to my Linktree, linktree.com/Mondo Heather.
Thanks again, folks, for being on the show. Thanks to everybody for listening. If you want to hear more of me shooting off my mouth, check out some of the other shows that I work on. They're all available at weirdingwaymedia.com. Thanks especially to our Patreon community. If you want to join the community, visit patreon.com/projection booth. Every donation we get helps the projection booth take over the world.